tech is only going to make your job easier. There's always going to be a need for humans. If you look at millennials, I think Gen Z is after millennials. Like, the one thing they want is that go-to person that's knowledgeable from a relationship standpoint, but also easy access. In this episode, Courtney and I sit down with Stacey Brown, the owner and creator of InsurTech Hartford. We're going to be discussing what is InsurTech, how is technology disrupting not only the insurance industry, but how is it affecting captive and independent agents? What can you expect now and in the future? And we really go into the importance of the human element and how technology is going to make your life easier. With that being said, let's start the show. Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. We are your hosts, Michael and Courtney Weaver, and we have special guest Stacey Brown with us today. Stacey, how are you?
I'm doing great, Michael, Courtney. Nice to see you guys.
Absolutely.
We're pumped to get into this.
InsurTech.
Yes, we're going to talk about InsurTech. Stacey, give us a little bit of background on who you are and what you're doing in the InsurTech space and even in the insurance space.
Sure. So I got into insurance back in 2001, right? So I managed to get my first job after the dot-com bust. Basically, I had seen all the rise and fall of all the crazy things as the internet came into being. And then after the bust, I was like, well, I still need a paycheck. So one of my friends we were working for this one startup company that went under, and he got a job at Travelers, and he's like, hey, send me your resume. They're hiring over here. So I sent my resume and I got hired, and I'm like, you'll pay me how much? And I'm going to get benefits. And I don't I don't have to work weekends. And this is amazing. Right. It sounded like the best job ever, except for the fact that it was in insurance. I had absolutely no interest in ever being insurance. I was a tech guy, and but what I learned, so here it is, 21 years later, I've been in the insurance industry. I worked for two carriers over that entire 20 plus years. I worked for Travelers for several years, and then I just recently left AXA XL, where I had spent 14 years. And what I got to learn about the insurance industry is it is a tech and data industry. Everything we do is around tech and data. That and pushing paper and collecting money, right? But that it's all about tech and data on the back end. And so I had a wonderful career. And about 6 years ago, the concept of InsurTech was starting to buzz and starting to bubble up, and investors were putting money into these early stage startup companies. And, I was working for a multinational company, and I had colleagues in other parts of the world that were going to these great events. And I live in Hartford, Connecticut, and there's a lot of insurance in Hartford, but there was no InsurTech anything going on. And I was like, I want to be a part of something, and there was nothing. So I just started running networking events, and I called it InsurTech Hartford, right? And people started coming out to them, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And that's kind of how I got into the InsurTech scene, right? Is I was this tech guy working in insurance, passionate about InsurTech, and just want to be a part of something. Also reflecting back to what I saw, the trends and how things played out during the dot-com boom days. And I felt like, geez, this is like that. It looks like that all, coming all over again, but with an industry that I know about, which was insurance and technology. So that's how I kind of got into it.
No, that's cool. And you know what? I may not have been a tech guy getting into it, but I had the same thought. Insurance, boo, boring.
You even you curled your lip when you said it was like nostril flare, insurance. I'm curious though, Stacey, help me understand the difference between, as an insurance professional, a captive agent or an independent agent. Where does InsurTech, where does that fall in that? What's the differentiating factor there?
Well, I guess autonomy, right, is the differentiating factor. If you're an independent agent, you need to bring your own tools, right? If you're a captive agent, the carrier who owns your logo probably has operational platforms and things, and there's some things where there's some discretion and tools probably they don't provide that you can bring. But I think the independents have, it's all on them to figure out the systems and the processes and I think that's the biggest difference, and also with a big brand, you've got Mothership providing you, they do a lot of the research and they're bringing things to market for you, where if you're independent, you've got to go out of your way to stay current, right? Because now independents, there's different size groups for that as well. And, but generally speaking, that's what I think is really the big difference, at least as it relates to InsurTech.
Yes. Yeah. So, and you said something interesting before we got started. And so I'd like to just kind of talk about that. Like, even with everything going on in the tech space, you say you're very adamant about the human element. So I'd love for you to dig into that a little bit, because I do think that technology scares some people within our industry.
Yeah. So when InsurTech was starting, and first off, what is InsurTech, right? It means something different depending on who you're talking to. I think the most universal definition of it is just using technology to make insurance better, right? So that can have a million ways in which it can be applied, but that's really the most simple definition of it. So over the years, we've seen, technology advance faster and faster. Speed is the new oil kind of a thing, right? It's like everything happens so fast. And if you can, back in those, I'll reference back to the .com days, right? If you wanted to launch an online, company, you had to spend millions of dollars on data centers and servers, and you had to have the technicians that knew how to install and run and operate all that stuff. You had to worry about if it went blip in the middle of the night. Like, it was just such a stressful thing and very capital and resource intensive. But nowadays, anybody could, jump on a Wix site and get started before they even have a full product, right? And you can even, start free, really, if you wanted to have ads on your stuff, right? So, like, the barriers to entry have gone way down. So, entrants are coming in from all over, but the rate of change. So, if you can get to market and you could be differentiating with your technology, someone's going to be a fast follower, right? So it used to take, it used to be if you had a technology moat around what you were doing, it would take a few years for someone to catch up by the time you went public about it. Now those years could be months or even weeks sometimes, depending on what it is, right? So if technology can't really be the thing that makes you special long term, right? It can get you jump started, it can leapfrog you, can get you out in front of people, but it won't keep you there. Unless you're just really, really good at being Google and continuously innovating new technologies, right? But what I think it really comes down to is people, right? And the more that technology advances, the more important it is to be people focused. And most of the technology, people talk about, AI is going to take our jobs and stuff. And AI is simplifying our jobs. And maybe we won't need as many jobs in the future as we did in the past. We already don't need as many jobs today as we did in the past. And I don't see a bunch of homeless people walking around the street saying, I was doing great in insurance before computers took my job, right? So it's an evolution. And we already know that there's other trends in the talent in the workforce that are looking at, gaps. And like, we're not bringing people into the industry fast enough to replace the people that are coming out. So we need the technology just to help boost the productivity and to make up for the talent gap, right? So I think people have a lot less to worry about with technology in insurance than what they might like to think. But I'll go back to the original question about people. It's really about people. Insurance will continue to be a people and relationship-based business. Certain products, like auto products and homeowners, like these are very commoditized things. States regulate it. The banks tell you have to have it. And so most people, it's a forced buy, and they're buying what they want or what they need, the minimum that they need. But then when you start getting into the more sophisticated buyers, people with assets, and they actually worry about protecting their lives and their loved ones and worrying about everybody's future and stuff, they start to look at they need to understand more about the insurance industry, and that requires education. And I'd like to think I'm a smart dude and I figure a lot of stuff out. But you know what? When I'm buying insurance, I need to pick up the phone and call somebody because it's difficult. There's a lot out there, and depending on what you're looking at, you start peeling the onion, you start seeing all those other layers, and people need people to help figure that out. And there's chat bots, and you can put a chat bot in somebody's face, but you know what? It's the equivalent in my mind of when you try calling the bank and that freaking system. I don't even have to go on about that. You know what I'm talking about, right?
The minute you said chat bot, I started shaking my head because I'm like, if you want me to throw my computer, pop a chat bot up to try to talk back to me, and I'm like, what is going on?
No, and I love that you're. Yeah, we're not fans of chat bots. But
we're pressing zero, like help.
But I love what you said there, Stacey, because I cannot agree, because I talk to a lot of insurance agents like daily, and a lot are scared about tech. And I always say the same thing, like tech is only going to make your job easier. There's always going to be a need for humans. If you look at millennials, I think Gen Z is after millennials. Like the one thing they want is that go-to person that's knowledgeable from a relationship standpoint, but also easy access, easy use. And I think that's where, like, if you're good at relationships and you have the tech, you're going to crush it. You're going to really, really crush it. So my question for you is what are some things you're excited about in the tech space right now? What are some things that are coming out that you're just like, holy smokes, this could change the environment. This could make insurance agents' lives easier?
No doubt it's AI. Right. Okay. It's Chat GPT. The things that I've seen that tool doing are game changing. Right. And the thing is, it's not done yet. Right. It's going to continue evolving and getting better, faster, like every other technology. Yep. And, I think the biggest impacts really are more in back office functions. So if you're a producer or an underwriter and you have an outward facing role and you're building the relationships with the customers, that's not going to go away. Technology is going to just enable you to be more productive, more things at your fingertips, faster to market, faster to quote, faster to bind, all those good things. But maybe where we're going to see where we have been seeing impact on both the carrier and the broker side is more on the back office side of things, right? So, in a lot of agencies, there's people who they're making a living by just copying and pasting data out of this form and putting it into like carrier A system, get the quote, save it, go to carrier B system, copy and paste the data, get the quote, save it. Now let me send an email to the insured and say, I've got you different quotes, right? So technology is actually going to completely make that process frictionless in the next 3 years. I think it's going to move. It's moving. It's started to pick up momentum. Everyone's been talking about APIs and integrations and all these things for years. There's aggregator sites and stuff. And I just think it's reached enough momentum. Tie that to the trends in the marketplace of, when I started doing InsurTech stuff 6 years ago, everyone was talking about, in the future, there's going to be this exodus of agents and brokers from the market, and so the ones that are there aren't really that tech savvy, and they're not that interested in becoming more tech savvy because they just need to run their business model for a few more years till they hit retirement. And but now we're here now, right? And I think what we're seeing is more and more newer incumbent agents coming in, technology focused from the beginning, right? So we're starting to have that. And so I think once the distribution side starts to pull that, the carrier side gets more motivated to push it. So carriers have been very slow. not surprising to anybody, but carriers have been very slow about adopting, and I get it. I spent 20 plus years on that side of the business. There's a lot of things you can do. There's just not enough resources to do it all. Like I went to a conference and I saw this one CIO say, our company, we have the resources to do anything we want. We just don't have the resources to do everything we want. And that's what it's like in a carrier. There's 1,000 good business cases out there, but you only have like 300 things that you could support at one time, right? Yeah. So it's constantly a juggling game to figure out what the right priorities are. And that's, based on your premium and how much you're going to allocate to IT spend in the year and stuff like that. So it's always a juggling game and prioritization game. And that's why it takes time for the industry to evolve because it's wide, it's thick. There's a lot going on and a lot of opportunity everywhere, and only so much you can do. So now taking it back to the carrier side being slow, I think everybody is just speeding up now. And this is going back to what excites me is tools like ChatGPT, because it can make information at your fingertips in plain text, right? And today there are certain limitations around it in terms of the size of a document, the amount of data you can put into it and stuff. But those limitations will go away, and pretty soon your entire AMS system is going to be. Now this won't be the next 3 years, but at some point in time, your AMS system is going to be, Siri, get me a quote for the Weavers. They just bought a new house at this 123 address, and it's going to happen, and he's going to review it and he's going to pass it on, right? It's going to be amazing how this, and there are solutions out there now where, so it used to be, it was on the carrier. The carrier would spend a lot of time underwriting, and they'd have the biggest part they would have to do would be the data gathering part. They'd need a DMV report, or they'd need a property report or a clue report or whatever, right? They'd be doing all this data gathering. Then they started realizing, hey, we can automate this data gathering because we can do APIs to this, that, and the other thing. But now there are companies out there going the next level that they will do the data gathering for you and just give you, like, if you want to do property quotes, you put in the address and it'll go out and it'll scrape crime data neighborhood. It'll scrape everything and anything that you could think of and just give it all to you in a digestible report. And so now the carriers don't even need to build all that stuff anymore, right? So, and this is what I mean about it's happening faster and faster. Yep. Yeah. So within the next few years, a lot of the process and manual process that we have today, I think, is going to be a lot more frictionless. But again, it goes back to, that's going to allow you to get back to your customers faster as a broker, right? You're going to be able to spend more time with them, build deeper relationships, talk to more customers, less time spent on the phone with your back office, less time spent waiting for your back office, who's really waiting for the carrier's back office, and et cetera. So anyway, AI is where it's at. And there's some good stuff going on with IoT and stuff, but AI is really where it's at.
What is IoT? I don't know what that means.
Oh, it's the Internet of Things. So it's basically everything and anything that's connected to the internet.
The interwebs. Okay.
Yes. So everything and anything nowadays that can be connected to the internet is getting connected to the internet. Your refrigerator, your everything, your car can be connected to the internet, and there's all this data flying around all over the place, and it's like, well, what do insurers do with that data? Think about something starting as simple as like a Ring doorbell, right? Like, can your insurer use the data coming out of your Ring doorbell to provide you better security, which would reduce losses and claims? Think about flood devices. But then, you see it, and you see life insurance companies trying to figure out how to incentivize people to take more steps per day, and based off of the data on their devices. And, and I seen the thing where somebody tied a watch to their dog and sent it out into the yard.
I saw that too. It's like they're killing it.
But it's like all these things, and health insurance, and wearables in the workplace. So So to help reduce workers' comp injuries. And hey, you know what, Michael, I noticed, yesterday, the computer noticed yesterday that when you were in the warehouse, you weren't lifting properly, right? So you got to take care of that before it becomes a problem for you, right? And so, like, just getting from all this IoT stuff is the big buzzwords I see around it is focus around risk prevention as opposed to risk response, right? So we can still do risk response. Hey, there's a fire, let's get on that right away, right? We've had that kind of technology for a long time. But when you could sense the temperatures rising in the room, or something's going wrong with the electrical in the house or whatever would cause a fire, right? Like, there's things you could do to get proactive to minimize the impact or to prevent it, right? And flooding, there's a lot of risks that can be prevented. And so that's what a lot of carriers are looking at. They're looking at all these connected devices and these sensor devices, and they're trying to figure out, like, how can we leverage this data to expand from just people who pay claims to become people that help prevent claims.
Yep. No, Internet of Things, I dig that. And then the AI, like the example you gave of just, hey, do this quote, like, I think that's a game changer to be able to make insurance agents' lives easier, to be able to do more relationship fact finding, and then all they have to do is go in and update the quote to what should be adequate for the customer's needs. I think that's going to be huge.
Well, I think in the insurance profession too, that can be the thing that stacks on top of you. Is you got in this business to help people, and I'm sure to make money. Like, those are the two things usually you get in insurance for. And then there's all of the service and the underwriting and the calls and the claims. And that's the thing that starts to wear you down. So this is really just putting you back into why you got into this industry in the beginning. I'm curious, Stacey, you mentioned ChatGPT, and I use ChatGPT a lot in our business. But as an insurance agent or as an insurance producer, how could you use ChatGPT for efficiencies there?
Well, in today's world, the current state of ChatGPT, it's called generative AI, right? Because it'll produce content for you. So it might be able to produce letters, right? You give it a few facts and say, I need to write a letter. Here's the subject. Here's who I'm sending it to. This is what it's about. Here are the key messages I want to say, produce a one-page letter, and it'll write you a letter, right? Whereas in maybe today you would give that to one of your back office people. You get on a call and say, I need X, Y, and Z, and then let's send this letter out today. And now ChatGPT can do that for you, right? But I think the thing about ChatGPT is the large language model that's behind it, and how that can be built out and built to be specialized. Because what's happening now is AI. If you look at most AI companies, they all pretty much do the same thing. There are only so many frameworks out there for natural language processing specifically, because there's a lot of different types of AI, right? So we're specifically talking about NLP, and there's only so many, ways to do that out there. And so if most people are using the same technology and pretty much doing the same thing, what's the differentiator? Well, what it really comes down to is how they train their models and how they can be specialized for certain things. So there are people out there that are just working on models where, the whole goal is to just be able to respond to property first notice of loss, right? Like, it gets really specific. And, there's a lot of people out there focusing on, unstructured submissions to API data in carrier systems, right? Like, there's a lot of different ways that people are looking at how to use these different NLP platforms to solve specific problems, and so that's gonna keep going on. But ChatGPT right now isn't specifically trained very well for insurance, but there are people out there working on that. As ChatGPT itself is working on getting better, people are working on how to apply it in industry. Again, today, mainly it can write content for you, and it can extract things. You can read in, you could try uploading a policy document and start asking questions like, is this covered? Is that covered? What's the limit for this? Right. Yep. And so that's a way in which agents can use it today. And that's the way I could picture it continue to happen in the future. I know a lot of carriers, especially when you start getting into like specialty lines, right, where a lot of the contracts are bespoke and the terms and conditions in those contracts don't follow boilerplate templates. And then those bigger carriers, they don't really even understand the full scope of the risk they have on their books. Take, for example, when, COVID hit, right? Man, there was, there was explicit and then there was implicit, impacts where maybe there were certain types of business coverages that were impacted because of COVID, right? That, it didn't spell out COVID or diseases or anything like that, but boy, there were a lot of carriers that got caught off of that. And if you weren't following a standard template for your contracts, how do you even figure that out, right? Mm-hmm. So you, by using, NLP and the ability to ingest documents and query that data in just plain English, it's just amazing. And we're not there yet. The ChatGPT can't handle those volumes at the moment, but it's coming.
Nope. I think, if I put myself in an insurance agent's chair right now, like it could be as easy as just writing an email to a customer, like, hey, let's do a policy overview of this, this, and this, and it'll type it out for you. Or think about marketing, like, hey, why should you have life insurance? Da 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 da. Great. Make a Facebook or social media post. Like, there's so many good things that it can, like, just now. And as you're saying, Stacey, we're just in the beginning stages of this. Like another 6 months, 12 months from now, I can't even imagine what you're going to be able to do with it.
Yeah, because it's only been on market since November of 2022. Like that's when it got released into the wild. So how fast it's already grown since then. And we could talk about tech all day long, but I do want to touch on, you brought up the conference and you brought up you were at a conference and you have a conference coming up. I would like to know, especially since we're focused on how important people and community, how that impacts insurance professionals, why we need to go to events, why you had a passion to start kind of your area and in networking, what that looks like.
Well, I think it ties nicely back to the whole point about people, right? Yeah. And insurance is a people-to-people business, and if you're on the business-to-business side of a people-to-people business, events are incredibly useful. So I actually wrote an article about this during the pandemic because I realized kind of earlier on that, hey, people are, we're never returning back to the office the way we used to. People are going to be remote working a lot. So the opportunity to get together with people is gone, right? Or is really, really low. It used to be, if you worked for a company, you'd go into the office and, all your colleagues were there, and you can have the social aspects of that as well. The breaking bread moments, the happy hour moments, the water cooler moments, coffees, all that good stuff, right? In which really people can easily underestimate how much productivity comes out of those types of activities. And now all of a sudden you're in a world where, hey, I go to the office, but there's nobody here today, and so we can all try and be in the office at the same time, but that never works, right? And so I was like, hey, people aren't really going back to the office. Back in the old days, also, like if you were, let's say, business development for a company and insurance companies and brokers were your clients, you knew that, hey, I'm going to go travel through Hartford this week. Or next week. So I'm going to tell all my clients in Hartford and I'm going to see how many of them I can get to go out to lunch. But you know what? They're not in the office anymore. They're not going to get dressed and come and meet you out for lunch. I mean, some of them will nowadays. But it's not as easy as it was in the old days when they were in the office and they were happy to go out for lunch, right? Now you got to convince them to get dressed, get take their sweats off and put on proper clothes and come out and meet you for lunch, right?
Stacey, are you referring to pre-COVID as the old days? Is this like the good old days? Oh my gosh.
That's a good call out, but yeah.
I'm
wasn't
thinking
that long ago.
I know, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, wow, we just aged really quickly for like the good old days,
you're all old now.
I'm sorry, carry on. I'm like, wait, is this happening? Yeah.
Well, you can see where I was going with that thread.
Yeah.
Pandemic changed things so fast for us. And now nobody goes back to the office anymore, but there's still high value in getting connected and coming together. So some companies are realizing we've got to create and fabricate things in the workplace to bring people in. But what they're also realizing is that, hey, another way of bringing people together is to have them go out. And so going to public events is a great way to actually. There's another angle to this. I think from an innovation front perspective, you can innovate internally and you can innovate externally. So internally, you might be able to get a group of people on a team working together on a project, or you might build a team of people from different functions, right? So you can kind of have different ways of crossing the ideas together within your organization, but you're still limited to the box of your organization. The lens at which everybody's looking at solving the problems is based off of the inputs they have in their brain, which are based on your existing processes and your existing data and your existing systems. You start going out to conferences, you start crossing the streams externally with people that are doing it differently, right? Somebody once said to me, insurance, we all do the same thing, we just do it differently. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Yep. But you start getting out there and you start learning like what the differences are. And now you start bringing new ideas back to your organization. And so now combine those two things, right? The need for rapid innovation in order to stay in pace with the way the market's all changed now, and in the speed at which technology changes now, combined with the fact that people don't go to the office like they used to. It's harder to get their time, and there is benefit in doing so and collaborating. Events are a big part of the solution. It gives you a reason to go out and be somewhere where other people are going to be focused around your industry. You learn, you connect. It's really enjoyable. And that's why with the InsurTech Hartford stuff that I started 6 years ago, we started out just being local networking in Hartford. But InsurTech Hartford is now a global brand, and people come from literally all over the world when we have conferences and stuff. And our next conference is going to be on May 2nd and 3rd. It's at a venue called Mohegan Sun, which is actually an amazing place. It's considered the second largest casino in the U.S. outside of Las Vegas. But you don't have to care about casinos, because it's not like Vegas where you can't get anywhere without walking through a casino. You can spend a whole week there and never go into the casino, because you ent there from the hotel, and all the shopping and restaurants are there. The business places where we're having the events are. You don't have to pass through a casino at all, and the whole place is a work of art. They've run the Miss America pageant there the last few years because it's just that beautiful of a place. And so if you can imagine being in a 500,000 square foot captive venue with restaurants and shopping and 2 days of content focused on all the latest and greatest innovations going on in the insurance industry, and then the ability to get entertained at night as well. So it's going to be more than just an event. It's an experience is what we've tried to build around it. Because when you go to events, everyone has content, everyone has food and beverage. These are par for the course, and they can make the difference between good events and bad events. Because if you got bad content, that's bad for you, right?
Yeah.
But I think the difference between good and great ones are the great ones give you a great experience. And that's why we picked Mohegan Sun for this year's symposium. So I hope you'll be able to find time in your busy calendars to come on out to Connecticut on May 2nd and 3rd.
I'd love it. No, that's awesome.
And an experience. I got to know, Stacey, though, because I've been cracking jokes this whole time. So do you gamble at all?
I've been known to. So the thing is, I live 20 minutes from this place, right? And in Eastern Connecticut, there's not a whole lot to do. So, my wife and I, we wind up going there a couple times a month. But we go there and we eat and we walk around, and sometimes we'll plug a couple 20s in the slot machine.
Okay, I was going to ask, what's the game?
So I'm personally, when I play, I'm more of a blackjack guy. I'd rather sit at the table, but I don't do it as much as I used to when I was very young and all these casinos were new in Connecticut. I probably went a little too overboard, you would say. So I learned some lessons the hard way. And that's why, I don't like to say never, but I don't do it like I used to, but I do like blackjack. I learned how to play craps actually, which is kind of a fun game once you start learning how to play it.
Oh, you can't beat the energy of the table unless it goes dead. Then you want to run away because the table's about to go cold.
Yeah. No, when a table's on fire, oh my gosh, the excitement is amazing. And, but slot machines, I don't know, anything that I feel like that I can get $20 to last as long as possible and have a little fun.
There you go.
The thing about slot machines is you know that, but if you play long enough, you will lose. There's no way. If you put $50 in and you won $100, you might as well stop if your goal was to come out ahead. Because, if you think you're going to win $10,000 from $1 slot machines, it's kind of hard to do that. It happens. You hear these $1 million prize winners and stuff, but those are the dreamers, And I learned my lesson the hard way, though. That's all I can say about it.
Hey, Vegas wasn't built off a bunch of winners, all right? So.
Yeah, no. I saw somebody once said to me, I think it was in when I was at the casino. They were like, just look around. Look how big and beautiful this place is. How do you think they pay for all that?
That's right. That's right.
So you're in Vegas #2 for your conference. You have all of that energy, all of that excitement. And I 100% agree that people, especially now, they're buying an experience, they're buying a feeling, because you can have great content. But if you're not connecting and you don't have that energy, it's not going to feel the same. So I love that you put it in that spot, because it sounds like it's going to be so much fun.
Money follows fun.
Always.
Money follows fun. So Stacey, if somebody wanted to contact you, follow you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, LinkedIn is definitely the probably the best place to find me and to follow me. InsurTech Hartford has its own website, InsurTechHartford.com. And our event that we were just talking about, InsurTech Hartford Symposium.com, is out there as well for more information about that. But yeah, I'd say those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
Perfect. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fantastic. And for all of those that listening, we appreciate you as always. Time is the most important and valuable asset that we have. We appreciate you spending time with us today. Go out, make it great. Stacey, thank you again.